as we do traditionally this time of the morning, let's take a look at how the markets have been performing and look at some interesting and pertinent business news. And Nick Kunze is the one who's going to be joining us. Nick Kunze, rather, is the one who's going to be joining us for this conversation. Nick Kunze is Senior Portfolio Manager at Sanlam Private Wealth. Nick, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the South African Morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
So Nick, perhaps let's take a look at the Rand and how the Rand performed yesterday. Not too shabby, I might say.
Yeah, Rand has bounced back quite nicely the last couple of days. We've ever since Friday, when we had the US jobless numbers and they came a little bit worse than expected. So we did have a weaker dollar off the back of it. But it must be said also, medium-term budget, very well received internationally. That did put a little bit of a bid under the South African risk assets and the Rand and our bonds being one of the beneficiaries. So yeah, nice to see the Rand in the mid-18s for a change.
And taking a look at Redefine Properties for a moment, we see that they released their results. Also, they're off to quite a good start, or off a good trend. Certainly a better performance, although it was good in the previous financials, a better performance this year.
Those Redefine numbers yesterday, as you said, they were better, though if you did sort of, you drilled down a little bit into the detail, there were some confusing numbers coming out. I mean, earnings per share was down, which was a little bit disappointing. But to your point, revenue was up and distribution looks better. But operating profit and operating margins also down a little bit. So in general, I think, a mixed bag. But I don't think they're out the woods just yet, but I think they're heading in the right direction.
And if you have to compare their domestic asset value to the performance of their offshore properties, how do those two measure?
Well, it's an interesting comparison. Obviously, different currencies, so hard currency offshore relative to our Rand. The local ones have bounced back quite nicely. They've also got a big exposure to Poland as well, which is one of the sort of bright sparks in Europe at the moment. So that turned out to be quite a good decision to enter Poland back in the day. So that has been better. So overall, I'd say the offshore markets with the hard currency looking a little bit better. Saying that's despite the fact our Rand has bounced back quite nicely. But I think they've actually got quite a nice spread of a portfolio for investors.
And just looking at that particular sector, how do they fare compared to their peers as far as performance is concerned?
Yeah, they've been one of the better performers. Obviously, they're much more of a broader, I guess their portfolio is more spread. It's not just office, not just residential like some of our other players or some of the smaller players on the JSE property REITs. So they've got quite a nice spread across the board. And their performance shows it. I mean, they are in the top percentile compared to the other sector on the JSE and the property sectors.
So staying on the results, we see eNCA, which provides chemicals to the agricultural and mining sector. They released some results as well. We see that they were up in the mining sector, but down in agri. Talk to us about that.
Oh, interesting company. It's a good South African success story. They're quite a specialized niche business. Their mining has always been the sort of the flagship of their business. They provide the phosphorus and nitrogen using for explosives in the mining sector. So from that respect, they're quite cyclical. But off the back of that, they also play in the agricultural space, because obviously, as we know, for the fertilizer, the components of the nitrogen and phosphorus used in the fertilizer for agribusiness is good too. They took a little bit of a knock after the Ukrainian war, that exposure to that sector. But yesterday's results, paint quite a good picture. I think the share price is up anywhere around 23, I think 24% year to date. So an outperformer, good story, although it must be said, it is quite cyclical from that respect. So, with the mining sector taking a little bit of a pullback since the highs earlier on this year, it's reflected as well. But overall, I think quite a solid set of results from eNCA.
And a lot of movement, Nick, around Tonghe. They might just have a new owner. Talk to us about how important of a development that this is.
Yeah, I can keep quite a straight face, because it's been a bit of a soap opera that Tonghe, delisted, back on again, suspended, a little bit, all this since obviously the accounting scandal with Peter Stahl back in the day, they've been running around trying to find a suitor to bail them out. It is quite important. It is a huge employer in KZN. I think they've got overall staff. I don't know if it's just KZN, but they have an employer base of north of 23,000. So, from a South African perspective, jobs perspective, you don't want to see this business fail. They seem to be getting closer. I see Robert Kamede has got a consortium together. It's sort of like they came in at midnight to pip the other ones. And it's a much better looking consortium. They seem to have got the backing of the creditors, although they've got a lot of work ahead of them. I mean, I think currently the debt stands at around about 7 billion rand. The market cap is under 1 billion on the JSE. So a lot of work ahead of them. But I think I'd like to see them get it. And it's quite a good asset. They've got some issues, but the Mozambican operation is doing very nicely, very profitable. And Zimbabwe, which we often write off, is actually a very profitable part of Tonghe Hewlett. So, fingers crossed. I'd like to see this one finally get saved.